Hi, it's Laura over at Hyperstamper. I have another antique book cover junk journal to show you. This one is a real beauty. It was a book called Odd, and that's actually the character's name and one of the characters. And it's got these wonderful vintage beads that I turned into a bangle and some ribbon that I thought really coordinated well with these beautiful colors. We've got like a really lovely brown and some muted yellow here, a wonderful spine, and the back's all intact. The only holes I had to put in the spine were just for the dangle. I even put in a pretty little rose dangle here and some vintage beading here. And of course some crochet top and side. So let's take a look inside. Everything in here is authentic, original, antique and vintage ephemera. I don't use any commercial papers whatsoever. And if you want to look at any of my journals, just go to hyperstamper.etsy.com. And let's take a look. Here's the original first page of the book. That's a plate. And then there's the cover here. And it's got this beautiful glossy paper, which is not common for the early 1900s. And the inscription here is, "To my dear little Terry from Mrs. Elsie." And there's just some more information on the book here. We've got this wonderful children's book page. This is a vintage flip chart paper from the 70s, and I've got a bird stamped on there. I made this little pocket here out of an antique page, and inside I just made this little book out of some of my scrap papers. Look at this lovely little double image from it's actually a teacher's edition. She would teach with the images. And look at this wonderful image here that is also a plate from an early 1920s book. This is from the 70s, just a vintage game piece, which I think, it's 60s, 1968. Funny Bones, I actually remember playing this back in the 70s. And let's see what's back here is a plate from the very early 1900s, and that's the Garden of Whitman's house in Camden, who is a famous poet. A vintage crocheted piece here and a little hidden journal spot with antique paper up here. And over here is this wonderful antique page that shows different stagecoaches and as well as up here vehicles of the 1890s. These are so beautiful, fun to use. And another spot up here, another children's book page. Oh no, this isn't. This is the cover of the Theater Arts magazine from December 1946. Look at the vivid colors on that still. I love it. I didn't touch that one. I wanted to leave it intact completely. And I was going to use this in my Christmas journal, but I just wanted it for this one. So this is another 1920s book page, The Happy Prince. That's a vintage book page, I believe. But look at this from 1926. This is from the Delineator magazine. Look at how big it is, but look at this wonderful, wonderful ad here for Hawaiian pineapple. Isn't that amazing? I just love it. I mean, that's a really amazing ad for almost 100 years old. So we've got that on this side, and then on the other side, this wonderful Revelation in linoleum floors. Just so much fun. You have a lot of fun with that. You can reuse it. It's very brittle. Because it's so old, but still fun to have. Wonderful children's book images. This is a great ad from the 40s on Swiss chocolate. And just a little journaling spot in there. And then up here is just a piece written with pen and ink. And it's not from 1866, but it's about 1866. Probably written in the early 1900s. And then a bookhouse page from 1937 and a 1938 Paris, France almanac. And I made this little double pocket here, wraparound, with a 1940s children's book. And this is from 1909, sorry. And that is a hymn book page, The Hope Set Before You and Help Somebody Today. That's one of my favorite titles of a hymn. I love it. 1950s Theater Arts magazine page and vintage bird book. And then I've put two 1950s receipts here and a little bit of a waterfall action. And more of that. Beautiful graphics here from the publisher, just to die for. And this is this was from a huge book. That's the interior spine that I turned into a little pocket. and put a 1930s Monopoly railroad card in there. Speaking of Monopoly, there's 1930s Monopoly money. Vintage playing card here, likely from the 70s. And then these are from the 1920s, these little banknotes. They expire 100 years, these ones, after they're given out. And I just really love the graphics on those numbers. They're so beautiful, so beautiful. Vintage music sheets. This is really pretty. I just love this. I think it's worthy of framing. In the garden, little poem, and on the other side, building a strong body. And that came out of a children's school book. And tuck that back in. And I love the title of this, The Sweetest Flower. And here is a little floating pocket. Got a pretty little bangle on that. And I have an antique card here. And then in here, I've tucked in an antique photograph. And I just love the outfit that she is wearing, and the nylons are to die for. Do they still call them nylons? Pantyhose? And then over here is a 1950s Wonder Bread receipt. So cool. And that's just a really fun book page that said good luck, and that's an embroidery one. I just thought the whole thing was fun. So there we go. And on the other side, I've got a plate that I love. It's a Renoir, his children's editions, and it's stunning. Look at that little girl. You could, my goodness, you could frame that. The book is from the 50s. Of course, the original is much older. And a rose page from my vintage botanicals book. And I found this in 1900s magazine. Newspaper, a gramophone advertisement. Thought that was hilarious. Lots of fun clusters. Got some vintage crochet and a little journaling envelope here. I just made out of some antique paper and bangles. A little crystal bangle up there. And just lots of beautiful, I love the title of this antique book page, Home Again. Look at the beautiful owl and chickens here. And a wonderful page from the 50s. A little family going on a picnic there. And then I found a book page that said Mother Nature at the top, which I love. And this is a great plate from the early 1900s. It's lovely. And then another cluster up here. And I really like this. It's a story about a cardinal whose feather came down. This came out of the back of a children's book. I know it's a little grungy, but I think it's fun. And this is a piece of the cover of a book. Is that cool? It's Black Beauty, I believe. And there's 3 bears there. And that brings us almost to the end here. Comforted. I thought that was a lovely, this is from the original book. And I always keep in the end page whenever I can. So there you go. It's on Etsy now. Hyperstamper.etsy.com. And don't forget to subscribe.